Let's speak to Dermot Bryars, who actually tweeted me and has co-founded a charity called EFA London that teaches English as a second language. Dermot, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, hi.
What would your reaction be to what you heard Barry say?
I think in me and Barry, you might have actually found the exact opposite person. So you've done really well there. I would like to... what made me feel a little bit upset and angry about what Barry was saying was many of my students are the victims of these sort of people telling them to speak English in public places when they might be speaking in Polish with their children in a supermarket. Or in the case of one of my students in my English for Action class in Streatham in South London, she speaks on the phone to her mum back in Indonesia on the bus on her way to work. She says that practically every day she's had some sort of negative responses, people telling her to speak English. You're in the UK now, you're in England now, you've got to speak English. And I think it's completely unacceptable. And to suggest that the victims of this, and I can only describe it as racism, that the victims are somehow responsible for it, really it doesn't work for me.
So this fear that people like Barry has, and he's by no means in a minority, clearly, because Dermot, you're pointing out, you're hearing from people who come to your classes that this is happening to them all the time. Where do you think this? Where do you think? And that's really surprising that it's happening in London, of all places.
I don't mean to say that places outside of London you would expect it, but just because of the diversity. So Streatham, where I'm teaching a class, I think it's got about 160, 170 recognised languages in the local community. So it was a bit of a shock to find, in my class of about 20 people, that half had said that they'd had these experiences, and some of them have had that experience, on many, many, many times over. And one thing I would add is that it does seem to, the people who are on the receiving end, it does seem to intersect with colour, with race, with it's often women rather than men. So it does feel like there's something else going on. I'm not sure if it's the young white men from France who are being told to speak English. In my experience, it did seem to be more prevalent among Muslim women, for example.
It was a very interesting call to hear, Barry's, and it shocked a lot of people. A lot of people are tweeting me how shocked they are by what Barry has to say. Perhaps it's no surprise that he's never left this country.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's behind it. I suppose I'm probably better able to give the perspective of my students who are on the receiving end, rather than try and understand what makes people feel uncomfortable and hate on other people for speaking other languages. Doesn't make any sense at all to me. So I wouldn't even be able to try and explain it.
But it's a norm all around the world in some ways, Dermot, that when people in a majority feel as though their, whether it be privilege or whether it be their culture, is being eroded in some way, that they lash out against that and they feel uncomfortable. And that is a perfectly, I guess, human instinct. Yeah,
I suppose people will always have those views and carry that hatred. And I think it's the responsibility of the people who feel that is outrageous to organise, to take action against it, to nip it in the bud, really, to talk about it, to address it, and to stand up to it wherever possible, so that people know that it's not acceptable to treat people like that. And of course, as the linguist that I was listening to earlier said, that there are times where, as a social act, when people sort of switch languages or exclude people, then of course it's a totally different case. But when people are talking to their kids, people are talking on the phone. There's no excuse to feel uncomfortable and angry about that. And I think we should stand up to it in the strongest possible way. And that's what we're doing at English for Action. We're trying to help our students to kind of organise and support each other to work out what's the best response when you're faced with that sort of aggression on the bus or in a public place.
Dermot, thank you, firstly, for tweeting me earlier on, and then thank you for agreeing to come on the show and talk about this.
It's a really important discussion.
Thank you. Dermot Bryars there, co-founded a charity, EFA London. Check that out. Lots of people shocked.